Hi, P.Boucher here from Yarra Life TV, and wow, what a response we had to our Calici virus release story. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and contributing to the story. Now, as promised, we are keeping an eye on this current story, and we actually went to see a rabbit specialist, Dr. Zoe Feigen from the Melbourne Rabbit Clinic down in Boronia, Ferntree Gully area. She gave us a fantastic interview, very frank, as well as full of a lot of information. Now, it does go for about 10 minutes or so. Please, if you do have a pet bunny and you're concerned about the Calici virus release that's taking place in the autumn of 2017, please watch it through to the end. And remember, we'll be following up on this story in the coming months and also into the new year. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook to stay up to date with all the latest information that we can bring you on the Calici virus release around the Yarra Ranges in the Sylvan area in autumn 2017. Today we're with Dr. Zoe from the Melbourne Rabbit Clinic, who's been able to basically give us some of her time to answer some questions and make some clarifications in regards to the Calici virus release that's occurring in the Yarra Ranges autumn 2017, and more specifically the vaccine that's available for pet owners and domestic rabbit owners as well. Dr. Zoe, thank you very much for joining us on Yarra Ranges Life TV.
No worries, happy to speak to you.
Wonderful. Now, the Calici virus, can you explain for the guys out there watching, what is the Calici virus? How does it affect the rabbits?
Yes, so Calici virus, specifically Calici viruses, are a family of viruses, and it's mostly just based on the shape of the virus itself. Mm-hmm. The Calici viruses that affect rabbits are classed as rabbit hemorrhagic disease, which is that's the disease process that they cause, which basically means that this virus that is a specific shape basically gets into the rabbit system and it causes problems with their blood clotting and things like that. So it does cause a fatal disease process, which causes them basically to hemorrhage from various organs and things like that. So
basically causes
internal bleeding and so usually you won't see any signs whatsoever. You'll just have a rabbit who's unfortunately died very suddenly, mm-hmm. and often you won't even see any blood or anything like that. In some cases you can sometimes see them and they've had a little bit of bleeding out of their nose or something. In more chronic forms of the disease, you will sometimes see that they go into liver failure because their liver is having problems producing those clotting factors and things like that, and then the rest of their body will start to shut down as they develop anemia and things.
Okay. Dr. Zoe, how does the K5 strain of Calici differ from the normal strain of Calici?
So the K5 strain is the new strain that the government is going to be releasing in various spots as well as in your area.
It's a nationwide release.
Yes, it is. And a lot of community groups have signed up to help release it and things like that. And basically the idea is that the original strain of Calici virus, which was called RHDV1, and specifically the Czech strain of RHDV1, affected rabbits in a lot of wide areas, but it didn't really target rabbits in your kind of wetter, temperate areas, which is where a lot of farmland in Australia and a lot of population centres are located.
And the Yarra Ranges and the Greater Valley itself being prime agricultural
Yes,
region.
exactly. And the main reason that we're trying to control wild rabbits is because, you know, they cause a lot of damage to agriculture in Australia. Even though they have had the, you know, decrease in population from the original Calici virus. So the government has been looking for a strain of the Calici virus that will affect wild rabbits, and particularly wild rabbits in these more moist areas. And the K5 is basically a cousin to the original RHDV1 strain, where it's fairly closely related, so it's like a first cousin, but it does have a bit more effectiveness against bunnies in the wild who are a bit more immune to the RHDV1, and also bunnies who live in these moisture areas and stuff like that. So it's a form of RHDV1A, so basically the next family along from the RHDV1, the original strain.
The original strain, fantastic. So, now, have you ever encountered the Calici strain? Because there is fear about Calici jumping from, you know, one animal to another animal.
Yes.
Have you ever encountered that?
Our specific, so the rabbit hemorrhagic disease virus, the rabbit Calici virus is really just specific to rabbits, potentially to other lagomorphs. So they have reported some hares overseas picking up the virus, but in terms of other species, it is very specific to our family of rabbits and hares, really. There are strains of Calici virus that affect cats primarily, if we're talking about domestic species, but they cause a very different disease process, and they're completely different families of Calici virus. It's just that they're both considered Calici virus because they have that same structure to the virus, so it's the same shape. So they're basically the same shape, but they're very different specific diseases.
And specific to that species as such, that animal group or that, so
if you
one
do
won't
have,
jump from another.
Yeah. So if you do have a cat in your family who tests positive for having Calici virus and has a little bit of an upper respiratory infection, some eye discharge, they're not going to transmit a Calici virus that will cause rabbit hemorrhagic disease to the pet rabbit. So they can't jump that way.
If my dog were to eat a carcass, for example, that's been a rabbit carcass that's died because of Calici,
it's unlikely that they would spread it unless they were acting as like a physical transmitter of the disease. So if your dog rolled in a rabbit that had those viral particles on it, and then came and rubbed its face all over your pet rabbit who wasn't vaccinated, there is a potential that there would be a transmission.
Yeah,
but it has to be.
But it won't affect the dog.
No, the dog won't have any problems.
Fantastic. So Dr. Zoe, what is available out there in the marketplace to protect our pet rabbits and furry friends?
So the main thing is the SILAP vaccine, and that's the only vaccine that we have in Australia for the Calici virus. Overseas they have various different vaccines. They have some vaccines that protect against just the RHDV1 species, like we've got here. They also have some that protect against species like RHDV2 strains, which are starting to come up a little bit more in the world. And this is definitely a problem with the government deciding to release K5. We have unfortunately had in the last year or so, the RHDV2 strains have been popping up in the wild.
And we've had mention of that.
And there is a lot of confusion as to whether one is the same thing or one another, and there is a lot of fear that the government has kind of released these new strains without consulting. But very much the government's plan is to release the K5 strain because they've vetted that, they've gone through all of the testing and everything. Whereas the RHDV2 seems to be the kind of infection centres seem to be clustering around human population centres rather than around wild population centres. So if it had been released into the wild, it would spread through the wild populations and radiate out from there. But very early on in kind of the reporting of the RHDV2, they were finding, infections up in Darwin and infections down in Tasmania. They're very far apart and they don't really have connected wild rabbit populations. So we do suspect that it may be a little bit of contamination from people coming in from overseas and then going to rabbit shows, to rabbit groups, all of these sorts of things, and unfortunately spreading it in through there.
Because the 2 strain originates overseas.
There are many strains of the 2 strain overseas, and now we've got one strain that's
something's
here.
ended up here.
Yeah. Which we haven't really, unfortunately, had enough time to study at this point to know exactly the characteristics.
The department is working furiously to try to.
They very much
put
are.
Their finger on the
they
pulse
very
of
much
that one.
are, and they are working to try to develop a vaccine that targets the RHDV1 and the RHDV2 just as effectively. At the moment, the government has tested for the K5, so they've run the K5 through our SILAP vaccination, and they have found that there is fairly good protection for that strain. No vaccination is 100%. The SILAP vaccination is about 85 to 90% effective against the RHDV1. It has really very good effectiveness against the K5. And we're assuming, based on similar sorts of situations overseas, that it has fairly good protection against the RHDV2 as well.
Okay, so there's some positive signs there as well.
And we would be seeing a lot more RHDV2 infections in vaccinated rabbits if there was no protection whatsoever. So we are quite happy that there's some sort of protection there, but we just don't know how much exactly.
Yep, sure. So, all right, so SILAP may be the answer, or it certainly will help from a protection point of view. SILAP is available from most vets and veterinary clinics. Certainly the Melbourne Rabbit Clinic is very familiar with administering these doses to your pet bunny. Dr. Zoe, how regularly are the doses and what kind of costs can pet bunny owners expect?
Yeah, I mean, the vaccination up till this point has definitely been a yearly vaccination, and that's something that the company has been recommending for years. At the moment, there is some contention within the veterinary community as to whether we should be vaccinating more frequently or continuing with the yearly vaccination, just because there is this new RHDV2. So the theory is, in a lot of cases, that if we elevate their protection, their antibody levels for the RHDV1, there may be better protection for RHDV2. Unfortunately, there isn't any evidence at the moment to support that. However, if you've got young and healthy bunnies, the AVA, the Australian Veterinary Association, is recommending 6 monthly vaccinations for all your healthy bunnies, particularly high-risk bunnies who go outside and everything like that. For your bunnies who potentially are a little bit more compromised, have, chronic illnesses, or are older bunnies, then potentially just making sure that you protect them as much as possible with just keeping your environment as closed as possible, and also, continuing at this point on the 12 monthly vaccinations might be the way to go for them.
Fantastic. And approximate costs?
Costs, it is a little bit of an expensive vaccine, and it's mostly because it comes in a 10 vaccine vial and has to be used within 12 hours. So you're generally looking around the $120 mark for a vaccination, but that should also include a full checkup with a vet. Rabbits, because they are so subtle and secretive, they like to pretend that they have nothing going on, so it's always good for them to be getting 6 monthly to 12 monthly checkups with the vet to make sure that anything that we can pick up that they're desperately saying, no, we're fine, we can get on top of before it becomes a problem.
No, excellent. And it's always important to have regular checkups for any of your furry friends out there, whether they're rabbits or others. But look, Dr. Zoe, thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
Thank you for talking us and just clarifying a few of those points for us.
No worries.
If people have more questions and issues, can they contact you guys here?
Yes, our website, because we're trying to communicate as much information as possible, our website does have a very big write-up on the current state of Calici virus information out there. So they can definitely come along to the website, they can give us a call, and we can help anyone out with any information they need. So.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Dr. Zoe.
No worries.
And hopefully that clarifies a few things for you guys out there, and stay tuned because we'll be following up on this story in the new year. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page and like us and follow us on Facebook for more updates, more information on the ongoing Calici virus release in autumn of 2017 in the Yarra Ranges. Dr. Zoe, thank you again for your time.
No worries. Thank you.